story of this film begins in a secret research center, with a convict listening to the jokes of someone talking to him from outside the protected room. At first, the prisoner is very serious and does not react to the researcher's words. But after agreeing to the daily injection, the severe man begins to laugh at all the jokes, until the horrible facts of human genocide in history are still funny to him, and nothing can stop him from laughing. After the successful human test of this drug, it is given a golden star. The next day, one of the inmates, Jeff, is transported to the area with the guards to conduct field research, so that today's experiment will begin. After the arrival of one of the researchers, Amnesty, after testing and injecting Jeff with a new drug, he returns to his fellow inmate, who listens to music. Lizzie wants to know how Jeff's drug test went today. He replies that at first, he saw a beautiful sky with fantastic images, while in reality, he was standing in front of a factory and accepted the way it was damaging the environment as a beautiful sight. After returning to his room and reminiscing, he remembers having fun with his best friend until Jeff's insistence on drunk driving causes an accident that injures him. The next day, in the testing room, he has to interview Heather, while Amnesty asks them to get to know each other and rate their feelings for each other on a scale of 1 to 10. Heather and Jeff give each different casual grades, and there is no heat between them until they agree to receive a dose of N4O. The release of this drug in their bodies causes them to attack each other like animals and tear each other's clothes. Even though Amnesty and his colleague Mark observe their every move. After flirting, while these two strangers sleep in each other's arms on their first meeting, they confess they are in love. Hearing these words causes Amnesty and Mark to celebrate their success. In the initial trial of the N40 drug, however, after removing the dose of medicine from their body, they immediately distance themselves from each other and put their clothes back on. In the next day's test, Jeff has to repeat the interview with Sarah, an older woman. Apparently, she sees all the male prisoners as a hot meal for herself and gives Jeff a 100, while everything in this interview is disgusting for Jeff anyway. By re-injecting the drug N4O into the bodies of these two people, the previous days, events were repeated with more noise to determine the strength of this drug on the bodies of these laboratory mice. After the experiment, Mark replaces Jeff's Moby pack with new drugs and asks him not to let anyone touch his Moby pack because it could be damaged during rough flirting. This event will involve severe mental disorders. Several hours later, Amnesty invites Jeff to join him in the observation room. In the first room, there is a man who is a glutton, who will not stop eating after being given an overeating drug. But in the second room, Jeff sees his partners from the past 2 days, who are waiting for the start of their test today. Amnesty asks Jeff to choose which one of the two will receive the dose of darkened flux today. This narcotic is used for mental disorders, which when flowing in the recipient's blood, will bring him hallucinations, pain and suffering. Jeff, who has a bitter memory of taking this drug in his previous experiences, refuses to choose between these two people and is unwilling to agree with the board's decision. Amnesty agrees to postpone the test to another day. But in any case, the board wants to know if the effect of the drug N40 is permanent on the human body, so he has to choose between two people. Amnesty talks to Jeff about the goal of their research, to save the human race, and cure many diseases in their company, and considers conducting these experiments a high plan. During Jeff's imprisonment, Jeff wants to return in time to prevent his friend from being killed in a car accident. The next day, while all the prisoners are doing their daily work, Lizzie goes to Jeff and talks to him. Jeff wants to share the truth with Lizzie, but their conversation remains incomplete. When the security guards enter, Jeff has to leave the main prison grounds to make phone calls outside the prison under the Free Friday rule. Jeff's phone call is unanswered, so he leaves a voicemail. As usual in prison, he meets a girl named Lizzie, who looks a lot like Jeff's ex-girlfriend. This is the last message received from Jeff, and he promises to have nothing to do with his ex-girlfriend again. After this conversation, he will be directed to the chat room. Today, he has to go through the same process as the previous days, with a giant prisoner named Rogan, who besides being scary, also has anger control problems. Jeff fears the consequences after this experiment and does not want to go through the same process as the last 2 days with a man. Amnesty assures him that this will not happen to him, and after a few minutes, he announces that the conversation between the two is over. Apparently, this conversation is to scare Jeff, so be aware that he must obey orders in this prison, despite the freedom of speech. A little later, Jeff goes to the control room and sees Heather there, who, like Jeff, disagrees with choosing the darkened flocks to inject into the prisoners. He then realizes that Heather has been going through the same process with Rogan for the past few days, which angers Jeff. Amnesty calms him down and explains that the company has chosen several guilty prisoners to give them a different experience than spending time in prison by giving them a safe and free space. In return for all this freedom and respect, the committee asks them to respect the company's decisions and do what they are told otherwise. Amnesty will have to take Jeff back to Central Prison to interview people scarier than Rogan. In the cafeteria, he talks to Lizzie about his previous experience receiving a dose of darkened flocks. He doesn't want anyone else to go through this scary experience like he did, because the side effects of pumping this drug into the prisoner's blood will be irreparable, and it will convey a terrible feeling to them. However, he is forced to make a choice and returns to the control room. As he observes Mark Changing, Amnesty's Moby Pack. As a researcher, he uses the dosage of registered drugs. The two immediately distance themselves to keep the details out of Jeff's eyes. Heather is then called back to the White Room. Amnesty explains to Jeff that the company still wants to know if the effects of the love potion N4L are sustainable. Therefore, they randomly chose Heather to be tested on this scary drug to see if Jeff still has feelings for Heather. The board is willing to do anything to determine the results of this test. Jeff still does not want to allow the introduction of darkened flocks medicine into Heather's body, and he does this not out of interest, but out of philanthropy, because injecting this medicine into the human body will bring painful results to the host. Amnesty has no powers of its own and cannot change the decisions of the committee members. But after insisting again, Amnesty leaves the room for a few minutes. After communicating with the committee members, he tries to dissuade them from injecting this drug into the bodies of the prisoners. There isn't actually a board that Amnesty wants to talk to. And after pouring coffee and having a brief daily conversation with Lizzie, He returns to the observation room and tells Jeff that he's done his best. However, the committee members still want the experiment to continue. If Jeff continues to resist, the board will be forced to return him to regular prison, so Jeff is forced to agree to watch Heather suffer. After injecting the darkened Phlox drug into Heather, she begins to suffer and suffer. Jeff is injected with some truth medicine to honestly confess his feelings for Heather, but he only talks about Heather's current state of mind, and there is no love between the two. Amnesty finally realizes he's failed, but things get complicated after the Moby pack attached to Heather's body is damaged by pumping many darkened Phlox into her bloodstream, causing her to start smashing everything. Finally, this innocent prisoner kills herself in front of these three people due to the effects of the drug. Mark immediately goes to the White Room to save Heather. Amnesty locks his closet to go to the White Room immediately, but leaves it crucial for Jeff to take advantage of. While the two discuss the consequences of this incident and blame each other, Jeff finds confidential information among the Amnesty documents. He finds out that the owner of this company is Amnesty himself, and there are no board members by the folded back of the letterhead in Amnesty's drawer. Then he realizes he has named all the drugs on a labeled paper. After he calms down, he realizes he shouldn't leave Jeff alone and returns to the room. Jeff returns the documents and the key to their original location, so Amnesty doesn't suspect anything. Amnesty confronts a devastated Jeff and assures him that none of this happened. Confused Mark asks Amnesty to fill out a report of what happened, but he refuses and assures that he will make everything right. A few hours later, Amnesty goes to Jeff and sarcastically asks him to keep his mouth shut and not to deny his interest in this private prison. Reality has dawned on Jeff, but he pretends to agree with everything Amnesty says. After seeing Jeff cry, Amnesty suggests they both take a dose of the company's laughing drug to avoid the consequences of today's events. They spend a good time with each other and laugh about everything, even the sad story of Amnesty, the day his father took his 8-year-old son for fun, but ended up leaving the orphanage, and Amnesty never saw his family again. The next day, Lizzie is tested with a new phobia drug that strongly causes the host to fear the chosen objects. This drug is supposed to help people avoid things the government determines. After the experiment, Lizzie tells Jeff about her experience with a stapler. Jeff shares his secret with Lizzie and admits that his girlfriend Emily was with them on the night of the accident. And after removing his best friend's body, he tries to get Emily out of the burning car. But at the last moment, he did not succeed, and she was also killed. Jeff accepted to be in this prison to make himself suffer more, so his phone calls with Emily were never answered because she had not been in this world before. Lizzie sympathizes with Jeff, and soon they kiss. Continuing the conversation, Amnesty enters the cafeteria to prepare daily drinks, and there he realizes that these two people have an intimate relationship with each other. He checks the security cameras to find out that this is true. So it means that the drug invented by Amnesty can stay in the recipient's body. After spending 4 years in prison, Jeff has again fallen in love with one of the prisoners with the benefits of N40. The next day, Amnesty wants to prove everything and calls Jeff again and tells Jeff that the board has forced him to try the darkened Flock's drug one last time. The person chosen to do this experiment is Lizzie. This makes Jeff not agree to do this experiment at all. Amnesty, seeing the extent of Jeff's anger, assures him that he will not perform the test today. After Jeff leaves, Amnesty asks Mark to double the dose of drugs attached to Jeff's body to reduce his resistance. Mark goes to Jeff's room to carry out Abnest's order, but Jeff closes the door and admits to Mark that he knows there are no committee members and that the company and decisions are Abnest's own. Jeff asks Mark not to follow Amnesty's decisions, while Mark has only come to this place to serve the expansion of science and humans. But after Heather's death, everything is in question for him. For this reason, he agrees to Jeff's request and does not want to harm another human being. The next morning, Amnesty invites him back into the observation room to manually pump darkened Flocks into Lizzie's body. Mark has not come to the company today due to fever and illness, so Amnesty can experiment alone. Then, by transferring the control device to Jeff, he asks him to inject the darkened Flock's medicine into Lizzie's Moby pack. Jeff refuses to do this, which angers Amnesty, who decides to reveal Lizzie's true character so that Jeff will no longer feel sorry for her. Lizzie herself tells the truth to Jeff and admits that she did not come to this prison because of a simple robbery, and the main reason for her transfer to this place is that she is guilty of the accidental death of her young child. Lizzie screams for Jeff to pump the darkened Flock's medicine into her body because there is nothing harder than a mother to survive without her child. With injecting the drug into Lizzie's Moby pack, Amnesty begins to laugh as he watches Lizzie's agony. Moments ago, he laughs at them, thinking that Jeff injected Lizzie with the black drug, but unaware that Jeff has taken control of Over's Moby pack, and by decreasing the laughing drug and increasing the dose of the phobic drug, Amnesty realizes that his feelings are being played with, not Lizzie's. Amnesty's attempts to get the remote control back are futile, and Jeff injects him with more drugs to make Amnesty afraid of him under the influence of the phobic drug. Amnesty notices that Jeff's body is clean from all drugs, so Mark betrays him, and that's why he is not with him today. Jeff then asks Amnesty to explain using the B6 drug that renders the host submissive. By injecting Jeff's B6 drug daily, he intended to find out if the N40 drug was successful, or if its effects would always wear off. And to achieve the real result of this experiment, he is ready to inject the darkened Flock's medicine to all the prisoners. Amnesty justifies all his work by trying to help the human race, but Jeff is not satisfied and believes that by injecting this drug into the human body, the only decision-making power is taken away from them, which is against human principles. Jeff slams him into the table and threatens Amnesty to tell all the inmates about his confession. When Jeff tries to leave the room, he is threatened by Amnesty with a knife in his hand. Jeff asks Amnesty to put down the knife by increasing the dose of the obedience drug, because Amnesty sees his project, which is only his happiness and love, in danger, so he refuses to obey and continues attacking him. Jeff escapes the attacks, but eventually, Amnesty manages to regain the remote control. He injects the darkened flocks medicine into Lizzie's body in the maximum amount so that she is killed like Heather. But Jeff attacks Amnesty again and manages to damage the attached mobioke. During the exchange of heavy blows between these two people, Lizzie is heavily affected by the drug and seeks to commit suicide to avoid the pain and suffering caused by pumping this drug into her body. Seeing Lizzie dying, Jeff makes the final attack on Amnesty, snatching the knife from his hand and speeding toward the White Room. After Jeff reaches Lizzie, he removes all the drugs attached to her body so that, after a miracle, she returns to normal life and is saved by Jeff. At the same time, Amnesty communicates with all the prisoners, struggling with the pain and agony of his mobile pack being damaged, and demands that they stop Jeff and Lizzie, or the program will be shut down and they will be denied all Spiderhead benefits. For this reason, all the prisoners are chasing these two people to prevent them from escaping. At first, two prisoners try to stop them, but by working together, they remove them from their path and quickly go to the exit door. First, Amnesty exits prison to escape by plane before Mark arrives with the police. Fortunately, Jeff and Lizzie have a two-person boat to escape this hellish prison immediately. During the flight, Amnesty, suffering from a leak in the Moby pack attached to his body, experiences different emotions that cause him to cry, laugh, rage, and hallucinate. He mistakes a mountain for a beautiful sky view and crashes into it with a plane to be killed. Jeff watches the moment of Amnesty's death from a distance and is finally happy that he was able to save the love of his life this time so that they are both safely away from danger. Amnesty has also been punished for his actions and is now killed by his discoveries.